Welcome to Sex, Psychics, and Psychedelics, fun ways to find your heart. My name is Banana Jane Garnett. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, an explorer of the human condition, and a champion of the heart's great intelligence. In this podcast, I use my trainings in psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, psychedelic integration, mindfulness, and attachment-focused EMDR to source and reveal some of the best and most varied healing technologies out there. My hope in this podcast is that you find your heart resonance in these conversations and that you feel inspired to grow your own unique creative and healing abilities along the lines of what actually resonates and feels authentic for you. Please be in touch with any questions or reflections. You can find me here or on the Banana Jane on Instagram or at jane-garnett.com. Now let's dive in. My guest today is Alexandra Lexton, who is a prolific documentary filmmaker. She is also an apple farmer, a yoga teacher, and a retreat leader. I am so excited to talk with her today about the topic of her latest film, which is nature, Mother Nature. The film is called Fool's Paradise, and it's all about how nature is our greatest mirror and our greatest ally in healing. Really, nature is the medicine, and we are nature. So back to my favorite expression, we are the medicine. This is such rich territory, and I'm so excited to have Alex here today. Thank you for coming on Sex, Psychics, Psychedelics, Alex.
What a treat. What a treat to see you and get to have a conversation for 50 minutes or more.
50 minutes. I know, I just told you very strictly it's 50 minutes. But that's because I'm a trained psychotherapist and my sessions are 50 minutes. And so it just makes sense to do these sessions for 50 minutes. But don't feel like you're my client unless you like that idea.
I'm just going to go every way we decide to go. I'll be your client. I'll be your friend.
Thank you.
You'll be mine. I'll be your confidant and everyone else who's listening.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have a really, really intimate chat. I feel like this is going to be about intimacy and certainly about the heart, because I feel like that's already been my ride with you. And I feel like this is our intersection. And I was thinking about how we met, which was only like 2 months ago or something, on retreat in Costa Rica. And I think how we discovered our fondness for each other was by talking about Mount Shasta and laughing about Mount Shasta. Was that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the kind of duality of the presence of the mountain and the energetic forces that I think both of us really experienced. You know, I didn't anticipate that, but that's how we started.
No, exactly. Because we were at a table of people and Mount Shasta came up, and then we started laughing about how incredibly intense Mount Shasta is and how it draws all of these very, intense seekers and has this sort of uber spiritual culture around it. And it is a very powerful place, but the spirituality and the culture of spirituality has kind of gone nuts there.
Yeah. And I do think there is, something to be said for the energetic vortex that exists in places like Mount Shasta and, the pyramids and various other places. Sedona, Arizona supposedly has that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's just I didn't really think about it before I went, other than, I've never been, I'm going to a workshop here. And it was really powerful, just the duality of the experience. So we could go into that if you want. But
well, I was thinking that it does relate to your movie in a way, which is about the medicine of nature. And I just have seen it, and I haven't given you my feedback yet. It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me. It was such a spacious movie, and all about these beautiful stories of people kind of awakening to their truth with the assistance and with the mirror of nature. And, obviously this podcast is called Sex, Psychics and Psychedelics. And at a glance, what does that have to do with nature? But really, I would say pretty much everything, because sex, psychics and psychedelics are all ways of kind of igniting the heart and waking up the heart and waking us up to ourselves. And I felt watching your movie, of course, the energy of it was very different. It was more kind of peaceful and spacious energy. And, watching these beautiful stories unfold and landscapes unfold. But really, I felt also what was unfolding was sort of the awakening of the heart, people waking up to themselves as nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you could summarize the film and the experiences of people who have healed, rediscovered, regenerated themselves through connection to nature or reconnection to nature, that, and then brought that back into the world in some meaningful way, that is, essentially what the messages are. Yeah, I mean, how can, I mean, it obviously, I think it starts over here. You have to turn and look this way first so that you can heal and repair what needs healing and repairing, and then bring yourself back into the world in some way that can reverberate into your microcosm, that will then reverberate out into the world. And that's what the stories are really about. And that we are not separate, I mean, on many levels, we as a community on this one planet are not separate really in any way, but there's always these conversations about othering. We are separate in terms of our beliefs, but our beliefs do not define us. People believe our beliefs define us, and really I think it's, our common humanity which links us. Our beliefs actually dissociate us from one another, and that is a similar conversation around us and them in nature. Nature is something that we can despoil or take full advantage of because it's what we need, but in fact it is what's nurturing us in return. It is sustaining us here on this planet. And the sooner we kind of come back to a mentality of the symbiosis of our presence here on Earth, the sooner we will learn how to tend what is tending us, which is the planet.
Yeah, these are big and strangely hard realizations at this point. I think it's hard to to fully wake up to the fact that we've heard the thing that feeds us. But looking at that concept of sort of like nature and nurture, and isn't it interesting that those words are so similar? But I was thinking about that in my own connection to nature. Like, I grew up in the Highlands of Scotland, at least in part, and it was really just, and still is in this particular area I'm thinking of, just completely kind of uncorrupted nature. And, there's just kind of like wet ground with moss and bugs. And I think, looking back, it felt like a great mother, just being able to sort of run around and roll around and feel kind of nourished and held by this beautiful, old, safe landscape. The sort of the people side of my family life was, was rocky, truthfully, but that landscape was just didn't change. The water was flat, the hills were old, and the moss was always wet from the rain. And when I look back at that, and still on an imaginative level, that is massive nourishment. And so when people say, how was your childhood, I always think about that, and I think, wow, I got so lucky to have that. And I wonder if you have something similar. I mean, I want to hear about, I know you got the apple farm, and I want to hear about that, but if let's go back to the sort of the beginning. Did you have a strong connection to nature in your own life?
Yes, without a doubt. I grew up in a tiny town in Northern California. Almost called it cauliflower.
I like cauliflower. I grew up in a cauliflower. Yeah. Now we're getting psychedelic.
We're just moving into, I get off on these accent tangents, and I don't know what one that was, but let's not dredge it out. Let's stay on task. Don't let me.
No cauliflower tangents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up in this tiny town called Elk. It's kind of the town with two names, Elk or Greenwood, California. It's a town of 250 people then when we moved there. and a town of 250 people now. We moved there when I was 5, and I left home when I was 15. And it's really rural, and my closest neighbor and only friend was maybe a 1.5 2-mile walk from my house. And my brother and I were given machetes to go out and clear the land. My mom and stepfather at the time bought 5 acres, and I was like 5 years old out there with the machete.
Jesus Christ.
And finding
it's a bit scary.
And, yeah. And then my brother and I would go off into the woods just on adventures, and we were always playing, like we were Indians, and we'd like strip down to our underwear and like try to walk as quietly as we could, and try to hide from each other. And we'd take our friends out there and sometimes like lose them in the woods, but I could find my way anywhere at that time. So we had a lot of freedom, and I mean, I never had a doll, so I wasn't sitting at home playing with dolls. I was just outside in my brother's hand-me-downs and or roaming around in our underwear in the woods. And
sounds perfect, by the way. Sounds like a great time.
It was wild. I mean, it was kind of wild. I see pictures of myself with like matted hair and, funky jeans and boots, and I mean, it was beautiful in a way. Certainly, I mean, there's a whole nother facet to this story, which is just completely, untethered childhood, and watching the adults go through the kind of gyrations of the time from the periphery. There was a lot of kind of open drug use and kind of wife swapping stuff happening, and we didn't live on a commune, but a lot of our friends did. My mom is a fantastic artist, and she really was, we were on welfare so she could be doing her art because that was what she knew to do, and I didn't have a dad, and so we were just out there. I had a stepfather. It was another story, sort of an interesting story, but that we just wandered. Yeah, we wandered. And
right. So, I mean, not entirely dissimilar to aspects of my childhood. It sounds like nature was the parent beyond the parent, was maybe the most reliable parent.
Well, I mean, there is a grounding that I still get in nature, and a part of why, and you might be leading up to this with your own questions, but I'll go there first. But a part of why I made this film, Fool's Paradise Lost, and telling the stories of how we heal ourselves through reconnection to nature, is because I was going through my own emotional trauma. I mean, that word is so overused right now, but my own emotional turmoil, let's put it that way. I don't think of it as trauma, but divorce, kids leaving, broken hearts, broken heart. And
I like broken hearts. I was like, yeah, I can relate to that. Let's
be honest. And I remember thinking the second or third time around, like, didn't I already go through this? What are my lessons now? Do I need to have this lesson again? But and I could only find my personal solace and equilibrium through being in the woods, and I didn't really intellectualize about it. I would just get into this kind of like agitated state. I work for myself. I work at home.
Wait, when are we talking about? This is before you started making the movie?
Before I started making Paradise Lost. And I would find myself out with my dog in nature on the endless beautiful trails in Marin County, just finally coming to a sense of equilibrium. It would take about 20 minutes before all the chaos would kind of settle out. And I began to think, well, there's something to this. Now, I had no notion of this as a kid. You asked me, did I find, nature to be kind of like a mother to me? And without maybe knowing that at the time, there was probably some grounding happening at that point, and there was a scientific basis to earthing and grounding, and how it equilibrates our bodies. So anyway.
Wait, let's just hold on one sec, because you said earthing and grounding. I've heard of the phrase grounding, but what is earthing? Is that the same?
Earthing is similar to grounding.
Okay.
There's a practice that people do, which is putting body parts, can be bare feet, hands, whole body, naked on the earth for a period of time every day, and it equilibrates basically your ecosystem. The negative ions from the earth, there's something about the electromagnetism of the earth that our bodies require, and we're so dissociated from it as a result of being attached to our devices. Notice how handy mine is.
Yeah, exactly. I can see mine from here too. I know.
Yeah,
Like, what am I doing?
exactly.
Yeah.
And the shoes we're wearing,
Yeah.
and plastic products that we're adorning our bodies with, and our skin, and we are not in touch with the natural elements. We're consuming things that are not, as close to their natural form as our bodies can manage. And there's so many levels of conversation that can happen as a result of considering, what it is that we're putting onto ourselves, into our lives, into our homes, into our bodies, that is changing our chemistry. And to strip it all off and lie down on the earth, it just brings you back to a sort of natural ecosystem that it exists in your body. And people have found healing that way for all kinds of things, malaise and even mental. So, but there's no, my film is not about grounding and earthing, but there are elements of it.
Okay, so you to get grounded in this story, before you made the film, you bought that apple farm in Marin. Was that right?
No.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I was living in Marin,
Okay.
and I was having this kind of inner turmoil and finding my solace in the forest, and I was starting to think of that there's some story to be told here, not about me, but I wanted to see if other people had similar experiences. And then I stumbled upon John Francis when I went to the Spirit Rock Meditation Center on Monday nights to hear Jack Kornfield speak. It just so happened that John Francis was there, and he's the planet walker, and he's a part of this story. And I realized, this is the beginning of my story right here. And he agreed to do the film. But to go back to the chronology, so I knew I was going to move from the sort of suburbs of San Francisco, Marin area where I lived, was that once my kids, migrated into the world. And I was looking for a place to do retreats and workshops and residencies, and to, make my films and be just sort of more in the country, back to my roots. And it's also about an hour closer to where I grew up, where my mom now lives. And so I had been looking on and off for 7 years. And I looked in France, I was looking, up in the mountains and the Sierras. Anyways, I fell in love with this apple farm, and that's how I ended up here. It was 2020, and I was I had just launched my last film, The Lure of This Land, and then everything got shut down, and I had to kind of stop everything, including plans to go scout for a film that I'm going to shoot in Portugal. And I landed on this farm, and I thought, okay, that's what I'll do. I can't move. I'm not allowed to go outside. I'm gonna just change my life completely. So.
So what was the medicine of the apple farm for you?
Oh, yeah.
And let's talk about heart medicine, because I feel like the heartbreak is tied in with this, and I don't know if we're talking about the heartbreak of the kids graduating, which, as you know, my eldest is starting to move on out of the home, and I'm realizing what an epic transition that is on the level of the heart. And then we've also got the romantic heartbreak element, so I mean, it's always layered, isn't it? Heartbreak, there's whatever's going on at the time, and then there are all these other parts to it as well. What's happened before, what might happen, what's happening globally. So tell me about yours, and tell me about the medicine of apples or nature, or what it was for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone probably knows the quote of, it's where the breaks are that the light gets in, and that a broken heart, learns to be a more functional heart. And so that's on the, back end of the experience of having heartbreak. For me, it was the kids are leaving. I was finally processing my divorce of 16. I was married for 16 years, but I went, like, a lot of us love addicts, right into another relationship. And I don't mean right in. It was just like, seconds afterwards. So,
Yeah.
and so once that ended, I was faced with, my one child had moved on to college. The other child was going to be, leaving the house, and I would be, alone and without what I had built up to that point. And as a mother, I had stopped working to just be focused on my kids. It was something I wanted to do. And the father of my kids, he was the one who went to work. So I did some more traditional things than I had grown up doing. And that was tending my family. We moved a lot and all over the country. And I just had to pick up the pieces each time and resurrect us in each place. And but at the time that I was going through this kind of cathartic transition, and I wouldn't call it a transformation at the time, it was really just like, what am I going to do now? Like, who am I going to be? And I had started to get back into filmmaking, and I had already made The Lure of This Land, which was a documentary I shot in Belize. And I realized, part of what I was doing in a way was kind of following on that addiction to change, which is, okay, I'll just move somewhere else, and I'm going to make another life for myself, which I'll probably do again.
I know that one well. I lived in many homes. Yeah.
People say things like, oh, you found your forever home. I'm like,
no, I know. I totally relate to that. People have said that to me about, you're like, you're like,
forever mean. I took those vows actually out of my marital vows, because I don't know what that means. And I don't think anybody else does either. It's this kind of like fantasy about the future. I call it, can I swear on this?
Please. Oh, very much so. The more the merrier, yes.
Yes, okay, good. We swear like a truck driver every once in a while. Okay, this will be the first podcast I've done where I can just bring it out.
Unleash it, please.
Yeah. So, let's see. I digress as always, but what bring me back?
Okay, so we're talking about the medicine of the apple farm for the broken heart, and how you. Part of this is but part of my own motivation is, looking at this next stage of life that is not oriented so much to having kids and the known world of that, and the sense of, there's, hopefully more time being an adult to go without these big responsibilities. And what are we connecting to? When you have kids, it's such a massive anchor. Also, new love, falling in love is also another kind of, heart anchor. But I'm interested in this sort of greater love topic, I suppose, of like, how do we travel through life and keep finding ourselves in authentic relationship to it? And not just authentic relationship to it, but grateful, excited, alive, in love relationship to life, without that being focused only on another person. And I feel like, excuse me, and you and I talk about this in our private conversations. We've talked about romantic love and, like you were saying, sort of addiction to romantic love and these kinds of intimate relationships. But when those relationships disappoint or fall apart or are not everything in the world, which inevitably they're not, what is beyond that? And what is beyond our love for people? And how does, this is a very interesting relationship. And it feels like it comes to the fore when you're walking in a forest or sitting by a stream. It's something different. I don't know how to put words to it, but I'm curious what resonates out of what I'm saying in terms of your own story and this kind of, I guess, realm that you've been studying through the film.
Well, I think coming back into nature reminds us what it means to be living. And it brings us back into our animal body. And in essence, I think what I've learned is that when you go out you know, into the green, into the open air, into all the sounds, where you actually have to be completely on alert because it's unfamiliar. You don't know what's going to come out of the bushes. You don't understand all the sounds and smell, all your senses, sound, smell, sight, all of it is so just alert because it's what comes naturally from the animal body. And so you have to be present. And ultimately, if we talk about the sort of, you know, heart-centered aspects of our lives, heart, mind, or body, mind, spirit aspects of our lives in our day-to-day functioning world, we are mostly living in the mind, you know, and or, you know, our overstimulation devices, and not attuned to just the animal body. And nature brings us back to that. And in order to kind of transcend the discomforts, the preoccupations, you have to come back to this. You know, that's why I'm a huge advocate for meditation, you know, as a life practice, because that is where you have the opportunity to tune in to this body, the body, mind, spirit, and just train yourself to be truly in the moment, you know, not thinking about the unforeseeable future and their irreconcilable past. You know, you have to learn to be in full presence. And the beautiful thing about being in nature is it kind of automatically brings you there. It is a meditation. And so, you know, those two, if you think about being here in the home, in the life, you can come into that place through meditation and through, you know, this sort of mind training, mind, body, spirit connection training, which comes a little more automatically through connection to the natural world.
Yeah, it feels like potentially easier access depending on where you are and the circumstances, right? What kind of vision quest you're going on.
Maybe the lazy man's version of meditation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not easy, you know.
Meditation is not easy. It's one thing to watch a beautiful river and another thing to, you know, sit, you know, uncomfortably hearing the trash trucks outside your house. Which always seem to happen when I'm meditating, by the way, interestingly. Yeah, so back to your personal story. Was there something about the kind of the immersion in the farm that you found to be particularly healing for you?
Without a doubt. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone.
It looked like a lot of work. I saw a lot of apples. I was like, where do you put those things?
I mean, there are about 350 trees here, and you know, I inherited someone taking care of the farm and taking the apples in exchange for it, but that didn't pan out over time, and I did have a couple of years of having to just figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Can I really prune 350 trees? Et cetera, while making films and doing workshops and other things. But I landed here not because it was an apple farm, but because it chose me. And, you know, having bought and sold different places where we, my family, and I had lived, there was always this calling to be there. And I mean it like a physical sensation, almost like, this is where this is mine. In this case, I think it's not that I said, this is mine, this is going to be mine. It said, you're mine. And it
domed you. It totally domed you.
It did. I was domed by the farm. I look out the window and I see, by turns, a soothing kind of, you know, entity that encompasses me, but I also feel and see this calling to tend. And so, I think what really happened was I became more attuned to the land and the seasons and the needs of this live entity that surrounds me. And when you see the movie, you see that transition into like just succumbing to myself here and succumbing to the needs and the calling of, you know, this entity that sustains me while I attempt to sustain it, but I'm just a caretaker, you know.
It definitely feels like nature is the dom, even though the sort of the cliche about nature, like the cliche of about love, is it's this soft thing, sort of feminized, effeminate, like, oh, nature. And actually it's the most powerful force in that we know, that
We are at the
that we don't totally know, that is still totally mysterious, but that we get to be with.
Yes, that's also a message in the film. And I mean, to be clear, I don't make films for messaging. I make the films that call me to make them. And but that was definitely one of the messages that has become loud and clear. It's like childbirth. You are no longer in control. And same with, you know, with having the farm birth me. You know, it's just every winter I'm reminded, like, you are not in control. You do not know what's going to happen. You do not know if there's going to be a fire this year that burns down your house. You do not know if you're going to have flooding in the basement or any number of things that nature just brings. It just brings.
I think this is a medicine that you have, because it makes me think of the conversations that you and I had in Costa Rica when we shared what was going on in our personal lives. And I felt like the reflections I got from you were very spacious and helped me see where I was kind of clinging to ideas about how things should be. And it wasn't that I necessarily agreed with your perspectives, but I could see more after our conversations. And when I saw your movie, it was interesting because the topics are very close to my heart, you know, healing and nature, and now you too. And I felt, I sort of in a way had the same experience, which is I kept thinking, gosh, how spaciously you made this film, how well you are listening. I could see myself making the film and trying to make a point. In a way, watching your film, I saw my own mechanisms of control trying to kick in. And I really appreciated that. You know, it's such a gift when someone can show you, you know, where your contractions are, because then you can release them.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
nice to know. Nice to know. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people who see the film, and we were just at the Santa Fe Film Festival, just remind me that there are inherent messages, and they are, you know, not to be guided by fear, not to let fear be the guide in our lives. And nature is a reminder of that as well. You know, there is a reason to be fearful and respectful, but it cannot be what guides us. You know, it's like walking through the world, making sure you're covered in insurance, you know, policies, but you still might get crushed by a tree when the wind blows too hard and you're walking in the wrong place, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, in some ways you're talking about, like, you know, if you're seeing your future through the eyes of the past, which inevitably you do up to a point, but if you're totally seeing the future through the eyes of the past and trying to apply what you've already learned like a diligent good student, you're probably not actually listening hard enough to what's really available, because we don't know. And that's, I guess, that to me was, yeah, this message that was coming through in your film was the art of listening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny for me because I'm a therapist. You know, I've been doing this art of listening business for nearly 2 decades. But I don't feel that I've really woken up to it until about a minute ago, which is that listening is, you know, it's an art form.
And it's a gift. To
it's a,
give yourself, like
yeah.
to the person that you're participating with.
Oh, let's talk about listening to yourself. Tell me more about that. Or listening as a gift to self. I didn't know quite what you meant by that, but I was running with it.
Listening is a gift to self because in the silence, you can actually hear what's happening over here. In the silence, you can attune to what the body wants, what the mind wants, what the heart and spirit are calling you to do in a more intuitive way. And when you allow yourself to come into silence and really settle those messages, the intuitive messages that are innate in us, that we, I think, as animal entities, we're much more attuned to at different points in our evolution because of needing to survive. And we also have, I think, somewhat pushed aside these ideas as being woo-woo because, that sixth sense, our intuition, is something that is actually innate in all of us, and some are more attuned to it. And if you're quiet enough, I believe you can access that again. And that means coming back into presence in your animal body.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is making me think about, the fact that we are really alive, right? We are really alive, and we're really dying too, but we're really alive. And it's a hard reality to stay fully abreast of because, it's really fantastic. I mean, there's so much energy to the whole situation if you really think about it. There's so much running through all of us, and I think that there's so much information rushing around us. It's hard to not numb.
yeah. No, but I also think that people have a fear of being in silence. They have a fear of like stopping and looking and settling out of, being bombarded by stimulation and doing and achieving. It's scary.
Yeah, why do you think that is? I mean, I have my theories too, but let's hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure you know the answer.
Let's talk
For
about
the
it.
listener, I think it is because you have to face your discomforts, your fears, yourself. And a lot of us have a tendency to, when you come to a fearful place or are having a sort of life-altering experience, you just want to get past it. You just want it done. You want to be back into a comfort zone of happiness and
Yeah.
a sense of like achievement, which equals fulfillment for people. And so if you actually force yourself to turn and face the discomfort, which is a part of what meditation can help cultivate, even in the most disquieting of times, you turn and face that discomfort, you can see it for what it is. It can actually like open up to you what's actually happening. Where is this actually coming from? Is it from a traumatic experience I had in my childhood? Why am I responding this way to this person who reminds me of my stepfather? Why am I, I remember something that happened from when I was a kid. These are scary things to face, but that's a whole other conversation around patterning that we have, as a result of life experiences and amassing them as like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to close that door now. I'm never going to look at that. Makes me really uncomfortable. But sometimes I'm not a licensed therapist, but I've done a lot of work. A little shout out to the Hoffman process here with talk about patterning, and the different layers of our character and how we push them aside if we don't want to see and feel the discomfort. But in silencing and looking at the discomfort, you can actually process it, and then the fear goes away.
Yeah. I mean, I think when emotions are hot,
A
What's that?
pseudotherapist? Did I say that like a
Oh yeah, I
pseudotherapist?
think you've done great as a pseudotherapist.
Okay.
You could totally get
Okay.
away with it.
Honorary
Yeah,
degree.
yeah, definitely. Nature-based life coach. I think we can give you that title or something like that. Um, yeah, I've been having these like rage flashes recently, which I think are hormonal, but who the hell knows? Because, it's not like I haven't experienced rage in my life before. But I find with rage, it makes me laugh when I'm not in it. When I'm in it, it is not funny, but like it makes me laugh that, I'm a therapist and I understand all these concepts and I meditate. But when I get the rage flashes, I'm just like, no, this is not a meditation situation. This is just like, this is a serious feeling and I'm in it and I'm attached to it. And I just buy in, when it's a really strong feeling, you don't want to sit down and fucking meditate.
No, but I think anger
No,
has a place.
it
Anger is how
does. It does.
anger is how we maintain our integrity. It is this like doesn't work for me, and however, I mean, of course, there's ways to manage anger if it's
Yeah.
hurtful or all those things. If you go to this kind of irrational place, that's another conversation. But
Well, but I think it's related, right? Because a flash of rage is, at least in my case, often born of some relational situation, right? It's somebody overstepping, let's say, or understepping, something that I think is wrong. And that's fine, right? The boundary idea is fine. The feeling has its legitimacy. The difficulty for me is not unleashing and hurting the other person with my words or my tone or my fierceness, my ferocity, but also understanding the ferocity has its place. But it makes me think of my friend Annie in England, who's a really great psychoanalyst. What she does in her family is when she gets mad, because she believes very much in expressing it, but she doesn't want to take it out on anyone. She puts her fists in the air and she just says, rage, 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 and like stomps around the house doing that. And I need to do that, but I forget because I'm too serious in that moment. But I have to remember what Annie does. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's quite easy to sort of buy into little stories around, why we're justified in feeling whatever it is. It's hard to let things go properly. And it's hard to be in totally right relation so that you don't take anything out on anyone else while still sharing your authenticity and integrity, right? Not being like, oh no, I'm fine, my feelings don't matter. Being like, yeah, I do have this rage, I do have this feeling, da 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 da, but it's not your fault or even necessarily your problem. And it's just all takes mindfulness and care and education and the ability to go wrong, misstep, correct with another person. All of this stuff I think requires a lot of work and spaciousness.
yeah, and to be a human being and allow yourself
Ah,
to be a human being,
yeah.
and I mean, it's one of the things actually that John Francis reiterates in the film repeatedly, and that is that we have to come back to treating each other with kindness. And if we can just remember that, like, ultimately, I love you, I want to be kind to you, and I would like to have that reciprocated. Of course, there's moments of anger and personal integrity that you have to express, but I think that like having this sort of reminder in your practice to come from a place of kindness, and what this now sort of a cliche, loving kindness. What would I've heard people say in these various things I listen to and or study, what would love have me do? What would love have me do in this moment? And it can't always come from that place. There's a lot going on in the world right now that is just so harrowing. And it's almost impossible to come to a state of mind about, of equanimity. What would love have me do, as they're taking away all these rights from human beings? And
well, in a way, I think it's still a great question. It's just, I think when we get too global, it's hard. And I do think there's something to be said for, global consciousness is a little much at times. And sometimes you just be like, okay, what can I do here in my home, in my family, in my community? What would love have me do with this rage I'm experiencing at my right getting taken away? What would love have me do at my rage at my whatever, whoever, whenever? I think it's a good question, if it works for you.
Yeah, and in the moment.
Some people have a sense of like the sentience of love, the consciousness of love, and for other people it might feel too vague.
Yeah.
But it could be somebody that you admire. What would my great aunt Mabel have? Somebody you think has really evolved, basically. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, bringing in some sort of entity that is an inspiration to you in order to center yourself. That's used a lot in meditation.
Jack Cornfield is pretty good.
Yeah.
He's probably a good one to channel.
Yeah.
Our man Jack.
Ultimately, circling it back to the sort of themes of, how we reconnect to self through reconnection to nature. Sometimes all you need to do is just walk outside.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that in, because it's something I wanted to make sure that we covered is kind of like mini rituals for people who aren't actually in nature. But, what do you think are good mini rituals of like ways to connect with nature if you live in a city? I mean, there's usually a tree around, for example, but like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't all have the luxury of looking out a window and seeing green, but the more green that you can have in your life, the more sustainable your life and your, psyche will be. And that can even be as little as having a house plant. I mean, an aside is I kill all my house plants unintentionally. But what are you going to do? I just don't have anyways, we don't need to go there. But there is a science around the fact that your plant's energetic measurements change when you walk in the room. And when trees can sense they're about to be cut, or there's this energetic shift that happens. So if you can actually have a kind of relationship with your plants, even if they don't want to live in your house,
even if they're dying all the time, you can have a you have like a little hospice going on over there.
Maybe they came to die. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm their caregiver on those last. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to take that with me. But also just getting out, to your local parks and helping sustain your local parks, doing, like a local garden. That is just a beautiful way to stay connected to the earth and the chemical reaction the body has to putting the hands into the earth, and also watching, the seasons change through something that you nurtured is really beautiful. And that's sort of what happens here on the farm. And then knowing when to let go, like when to let nature run its wildness so that it can rehabilitate itself and not to intervene. When is the time? You can take that metaphor into life. When is it?
I was going to say, this sounds like a rich life metaphor.
It is, yeah. But when not to intervene, So rituals, though, to go back to your question, I think also it's even as simple as like if you can get into a bathtub with Epsom salts, or, and letting yourself be kind of dirty every once in a while, like going out on a hike and getting dirty, getting your feet in the mud, and letting your hair be soaked by the rain, and the body and the face and the skin, and going swimming in the ocean when you can, all those things that get you just reconnected. Also eating foods that are like the closest to their natural form, growing your own food, and learning about and tending your microcosm in this sort of healthiest possible way you can, which is reading the labels of things, not using glyphosate, Roundup, to kill the weeds on your land, which kills the the helpful bugs in your ecosystem. I mean, I could go on about how to tend your land. But if you don't have land to tend and you're just like in an apartment building, how do you access that? I mean, you have to get outside. You have to
Yeah.
get outside.
Yeah. Get outside, look at a tree, touch a
Hmm.
tree, touch the
Yeah,
ground, take your
that's
shoes off.
all of it. Yeah, be connected, be a part of it, integrate it into your life in whatever way you can.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Hopefully, when I come and visit the apple farm, we can do some earthing, some grounding, all
No
the
doubt.
above.
Yeah,
I would love
no
that.
doubt.
I would love that. I'm going to round up with a couple of questions. Um, One is for the future of your work. And the question I'm going to ask after that, just so you have it in the back of your mind, is if your heart had a party, what would it be like? Okay.
Okay. So the question about my work is,
Mm.
um,
Your wish
more.
for the future of your work, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mm.
So, Fool's Paradise Lost at the moment is on the festival circuit. The next festival is actually in Sonoma International Film
Mm.
Festival coming up on the festival's from the 19th to the 23rd, and my film show's on the 23rd. And then
Of this month.
of this month of
This
March,
month.
yeah.
Great, yeah.
And then actually, I have another screenplay, which is my passion project called Flower Child, which is going to be in the Beverly Hills Festival coming up in April. I'm not sure how that manifests with screenplays. Then I have another festival. I'll be in the Illuminate Festival in Santa Barbara. I just found out about that coming up in early May and others. So if you want to keep track of me, please follow me on Instagram, which is at LexProd, LEXPROD, and or the website, which is lexproductions.net. You have to put in www or you go to an old site. So www.lexproductions.net. So for my work, I need this film to get out into the world, to just spread the word. And I would love to be, doing conversations around the topics that you and I are talking about. That means I come to people's companies or they come to the farm and we do kind of mini retreats, and we do talks around these themes, of how we heal ourselves through reconnection to nature and the symbiotic necessity to heal what is left of the wild, our own inner wild and the outer wild. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways it can go into the world, or you can come to me. I can come and do talks, and present the film. I have other films that I'm making. I've been hired. I have a client who hired me to make a film which has some really interesting themes around afterlife communications. So that's going to be interesting. Dot dot dot.
Amazing.
And then I'm going to be making Flower Child, and yeah, I just want the work to be in the world. That's why I make it. I want to tell stories and have conversations, and I want to have conversations about our commonality, not our differences. I think those are the conversations that will heal not only us individually, but us as an earth community.
I'm with you on that. I second that.
Hallelujah.
Okay, now to the party, baby. What's your
Okay,
party?
kind of heart party.
You've got hearts behind you supporting this. I like this. You've got heart blanket or pillow or something.
Oh yeah, my friend gave me that heart blanket. Yeah, it's reversible. So I would say heart party. Let's wrap
Ta-ta-la. Perfect. Yes.
up.
Oh, I love
Would
this.
look like this.
You look so
Maybe
cute.
with
Yeah.
less clothing, actually.
Okay, so naked, wrapped in for people who are just listening,
Somewhere
naked, wrapped
warm.
in a furry heart blanket.
It would be
Uh huh.
warm. It would be filled with both men and women, and some animals on the periphery. because they're often spooked by parties. Some great dance music, some beautiful food. We would be barefoot on the grass somewhere, and the moon would be overhead. We would watch the sunset and the moon come up, and we would dance and we would sing. I loved singing
Yes.
mantras, so I would maybe Deva Premal and Miten would be there, and they would be singing mantras for us, and we would have meditations, and yeah, I think that sounds like a pretty good party. Maybe I'll do that for my next big.
I was going to say, it seems like it's going to happen. I don't know. Feels like it's on the timeline.
I didn't even realize I was planning it as I was
No, I
describing it.
know, but that this is what I do. I'm essentially a party planner. I just put all this crap around
Okay,
the edges.
this is
Yeah.
happening. Yeah,
Yeah.
the next big birthday, maybe on the island of Ischia in Italy.
Okay. Done. Count me in. Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's been a beautiful conversation. I think your film's amazing, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me neither. Thank you for helping it get out into the world
Of course.
and for your heart, your beautiful heart. Let me get out of this blanket.
Take it off. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
darling. Mwah.
Bye, sweetie. Bye.